just record it. So we've now started recording, so everyone on best behaviour please, so that the others can take a look at this later. As I said, that'll probably work fine for this session. It most likely won't work quite so well for the future sessions because they're going to be a lot more interactive than today. So just a quick one to say thanks from me to get everybody onto the session and for you to give up some time. I'm Claire Foxall, for those of you that have not met me or come across me yet. I'm sitting in my shed in South Wales, but I've been working with Emma Jane all the way through since about the beginning of April on the manifesto. So today is our first cross-functional team meeting. So that is officially your name, and so this is officially meeting number 1. So I'll hand over to Emma Jane just to talk a little bit about why we're here, and then I'll go through a few slides and we'll talk a little bit about what you're doing here and what our expectations are as to how we're going to be working with you over the next 6, 12, 24 months.
Okay, so first of all, just a little bit of housekeeping really with regards to this. So we are going to be meeting with you on a 2-weekly basis. It is really, really essential that you make every effort to attend. If by any chance you can't attend, we will ask that you send a deputy in your place. You guys are here on behalf of the executive. You've been nominated by your executive because they want you guys to lead on this piece of work. Also, as we have quite short time windows, we're all really busy, can you please try and come on to calls on time and dial in a little bit early if you can, so that we're not waiting around and we can just get straight on. So what we're going to do in today's session is, first of all, we're going to do a quick who we are and some welcome intros. Some of you may know each other, some of you may not. Claire obviously doesn't know any of you, so it'll be great for her benefit. We can go a little bit about the manifesto, the story so far, really brief. What you're here to do, what we need from a cross-functional team, how we can work together, and the different phases of the manifesto, activity areas and Q&A. It's going to be a little bit of a tell today, but moving forward it'll be a very much more an interactive session where we'll be taking counsel and working with you on what we need to make sure that this manifesto is successfully embedded throughout our organisation. I don't think I've forgotten anything, have I, Claire?
No, you have not.
Fabulous. I will hand over to you.
Okay, so if we just go around the room, I'm not expecting some sort of fun fact about anybody. No icebreaker today because we haven't got time and everybody dislikes them intensely, I think. But if I could just have everybody's name and kind of where which area you work in, that would be quite handy just for me to get to know everyone. So I'll start. I'm Claire Foxall, so I'm an interim working with Sellafield, specifically on the manifesto. My background is everything from procurement and commercial to business change and transformation, and I've spent the last 10 years in central government or various related departments. So that's me. Carrie, you're next on my screen. Can you go next?
Yep, so I'm Carrie Shackley. I'm Chief of Staff for ES&S, working for Mark Neate. I've been at Sellafield for about 20 years now, holding various different positions during that time. I've been Mark's Chief of Staff now for almost 12 months.
Good work. Okay, Catherine.
Catherine McCloggery, I'm Head of Corporate Strategy, and I don't even want to think about how long I've been here, really.
Great. Michelle, you next.
Hello, I'm Michelle Morrison. I am representing the people function. I've been at Sellafield for about 2.5, 3 years. I've got varied experience, mostly on business change with HR qualifications, working across many industries, including nuclear.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you.
Gareth, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Gareth Iden. I'm the Operations Integration Lead for the Operations Capability bit, which is part of Rebecca Weston's organisation, and I'm representing the 4 operational value streams. I've been on site for 30 years in a range of operations and programme lead roles.
Great, thanks very much. Simon?
Good afternoon, it's Simon Wittridge. I work in the Projects Delivery Directorate.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Alex?
Click off mute. So I'm Alex Walsh. I've been in Sellafield 6 years next week. Been around the nuclear industry a lot and defence industries a lot over, well, too many years. I'm here representing Andrew Carr, which is legal, but the reason why Andrew nominated me is because of my role as head of the Warrington offices. So I spoke to Alison and Andrew, and that's what they're expecting me to put in as a slant into what we're doing here.
Okay, so that's fantastic. And then we're missing Lou, I think we thought was coming, but I'm guessing she is busy on something else. So Louise Furby and Helen Hughes will both be representing John Seddon. Not quite sure how they're going to combine the two of them. Adam Roberts we're missing as well, aren't we? Who is
Steve Bostock.
Steve Bostock, and then there's one more, isn't there? Who is apology?
Who is representing Ewan.
Ewan. Okay, so it should be a slightly bigger group when we come into having these on a more regular basis, but obviously this was reasonably short notice. So as I said, they will have the opportunity to look at this session after we've actually done it. So nice to meet you all virtually. I don't imagine that's going to change in the next however many months. I wanted to talk a little bit about our story so far. We've managed to ram it all onto one slide, which is good, because you've probably seen all of the slides, or at least I'm guessing most of you have seen the slides that Martin used both as part of the leadership briefing on the manifesto, or you've received other stuff through different routes or other sessions held by your exec, as I guess your direct line managers. So what we've tried to represent on here is how we started to put together the manifesto. So as we said, we have been working on this since the beginning of April. When I say we, I mean the royal we of technically 2 people all the way through, but we've actually consulted with over 400 in that time period. So that's the number that you might see, I was about to say bandied around, but that's not what I mean. And that's the number that you might see in terms of the people who really contributed to what the manifesto looks like and largely co-created it actually. So we went through a very open process initially of speaking to people about what the current culture is like at Sellafield. So we did have a view from most of the exec team. We did individual one-to-one calls with them, so there wasn't any sort of influence of anybody on anybody else, and we let them go through a set of sort of open questions and prodded them a little bit on what did it actually feel like to work at Sellafield. And then following on from that, or in parallel actually, we held a number of workshops with roughly 20 people on each, that were entirely, you could just get onto it if you wanted to. It was all, you know, nobody was pushed into it. There are a few people that were nominated, but mostly it was people who were willing volunteers to take part in the process. And we went through this first slide that's in the top left-hand corner, which talks about these are the kind of themes that we had as characteristics of what Sellafield's culture is. So for any of you that have already heard the sessions, the things that are in green are the things that were unmistakably good about Sellafield's culture. The things that are in blue are the things which are just facts of life about Sellafield. You might have a view on whether they're good or bad, but they're just parts of what it's like to work at Sellafield, and there is a certain dynamic that those things bring. And then the things that are in red are those things that were put across to us as characteristics of Sellafield's culture that people didn't like. And I'm summarising that bluntly because it came across in a bunch of open questions, but effectively they were things that people either didn't like, didn't think that were positive attributes for the company that Sellafield wants to be, were things they wanted to change, or the things that they found that made their life more difficult, I guess, within Sellafield. So when we run through this presentation before, we talked a bit about individual ones that we pick out on the slides. I won't go through that now because you'll probably have a view. Whenever we show this, we don't tend to get people saying, oh, I don't really understand any of these, I've never seen them, or I can't relate to them. Usually they're things that people have either experienced or they're certainly aware are the case within Sellafield now. The manifesto itself is an aspirational thing that we would like to move to. It represents the company that we would like to be. So what we went through next is we changed or flipped over the current characteristics that perhaps weren't so good about Sellafield and turn them into positive traits that you would like to see within the organisation, within a company. And again, these are things that people have put across to us during these stakeholder sessions. They're not things that we have come up with. They're things that people have actually discussed and said, oh, we'd like to see a bit more of this. So in the top right hand corner, you can see the key behaviours and themes that we picked out as positive stuff. And there is a direct map between some of these and what you see on the red boxes that are in the first slide. And in others, they're just the way that people think about the future organisation or the future Sellafield. So they're the things that you kind of will see encompassed in the manifesto itself. And this was what we talked about during the employee workshops that we had, and there was a straw poll activity that we went through to get a view on how these were actually seen as priorities by some of those 400 people that we engaged with. In the bottom left-hand corner of this slide is the slide that we put up when we were talking about purpose. So obviously in the manifesto, we are creating a clean and safe environment for future generations. And that is our purpose that we want everybody to be able to relate to. And we're pretty sure it does, actually. For anyone who was on the employee workshops, we actually went through a process which was a bit like pulling teeth, I have to be honest, where we split people into breakout groups and we got them to think about what did they think the purpose of Sellafield should be, what would help them to emotionally connect, what would help them to do all the things on this slide. So we talked to them about the importance of purpose, some good examples, and then we showed them this slide and then said, go on then, come up with it yourself. We had a range of fantastic purposes that people came up with, some of which were quite broad and long and difficult to understand. Others were about 4 words, which probably relate to anybody. But in general, and actually we've got a breakdown of it somewhere in a set of slides that we did, people came up with the same sorts of words, maybe in slightly different order, or with a slightly different slant to it. But in general, the things that you now see in the purpose, clean, safe, creating, environment and future generations, were extremely popular words that came up in that process. And so that's how we've ended up with the manifesto. So we've got the 9 behavioural themes, which fit alongside the Sellafield that those 400 people told us they wanted to be. And then we've got the purpose, which they directly helped us come up with. And I think 2 groups came up with that exact purpose in terms of the words. And then we've got a very clear steer on being able to see representation of nuclear professionalism somewhere on the manifesto, to make sure that that was a stream of activity capability that was recognised in something that we knew would be a big part of the Sellafield organisational fabric. And obviously the colours and boxes and that sort of stuff is just, it's design decisions more than anything. It seems to have helped, actually. People can see, you know, that it obviously sticks in the mind, the colours. It is completely coincidental that we have 9 boxes and we have the execs that we have, which is why you've got one with a purpose and we've got one with a nuclear professionals. It wasn't actually engineered in that way. In fact, we had boxes, we had circles, we had triangles. I can't remember the other designs that we came up with, but there was quite a few. And so that was what we landed on in the end. So this manifesto has been put together in response to the feedback we've had from the entire workforce, all the way from executive down to band 5, apprentices, graduates, etc. And has been seen by the board, though they didn't influence it or contribute to it at all, and has been created in alignment with what One NDA have put out. But it is entirely a Sellafield piece of work that has been co-created with Sellafield employees. And there was a bit of a chance for the supply chain to contribute as well, but actually most of the stuff that's in here you'll see from the workforce employee engagement. So there is lots of slides that you'll find on the transit folder, which everybody has access to, which talk about how we got to this point. You can even see the slides that we use through the employee workshops if you want to. That will give you a view of kind of how we got to this point. But that is how, in a nutshell, we got to the manifesto. Now, before I carry on, does anyone have any burning questions?
No.
No, good. Okay. So let's go on to what our team looks like. So we've had quite a small team up until now, other than those people that have contributed during the sessions that we've already run. But in order to embed or establish first actually the manifesto and then embed it, we knew we were going to need a much larger team. And this is not a larger team as in an empire of people that we're going to bring in and create and train up and all that good fun stuff, because I think we don't think that's necessary, and neither is that going to help us to embed the manifesto in the organisation. What we need is people who are already engaged in the organisation in relevant pieces of work, and people who are keen to make a difference. You're going to have a lot of people who are very keen to make a difference and who want to behave in the right way and who are happy to reflect on themselves and their own behaviour. And then you're going to get a bunch of people who will never in a million years change how they behave and how they are. And that's a fact of life with every change initiative. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to focus on those people that are never going to change, because it's not proportionate to spend a lot of energy there. Instead, we want to look at those people who are actually willing to live by the manifesto and actually role model behaviours. So if I start with the change makers, you will hopefully have seen the adverts that have gone out on the intranet and via Emma Jane actually specifically to try and recruit change makers. So this is not the same as front runners for my contribution, nor is it the same as those people who have change qualifications, who have some sort of relation to Rick Charlton and his team. We wanted people of every level of the organisation, every location, every part, every shift, really. If we can get that far, that's the variety of people that we want to be change makers, who are willing to make a change, who've got that energy, who've got that, not even necessarily influence, just people who are keen to make a change to the Sellafield culture and help us to do that. And we've represented them with lots and lots of squares, because actually we're up to about 150, I think, now, which, considering it's only been 2 weeks, is pretty good going. We then have the cross-functional team who sit right in the middle, which is you chaps. So one per individual area. You will hear representing your exec, which means that you will also hear representing technically the theme that they are accountable for, as well as your interface with your business as usual, which we'll come on to in a moment. And then the third part that we have is the program leads. So everybody who is responsible, accountable for leading a program, which is related to, but not directly, the manifesto, will be in these sets of programs. So we've put in at the moment just the sort of anonymized pieces on here, but you'll be seeing things like my contribution, leadership standards, leadership academy, PPP, ISO, etc. will appear in these. And there is a separate session that we will be holding on a regular basis with the program leads to make sure that we're all in alignment with what the manifesto is trying to do. So you can see how you fit into a wider scope of activity, but this is not a standalone team. These are people who are taking on these roles on top of what they're already doing. So I won't go over to everybody else's, because you've had the set of slides already and you can take a look in your own time. But this is you, the cross-functional team. So small team acting as the interface between the manifesto movement and each area of the organisation. And your role is to ensure that the manifesto is embedded in everything that we do. The kinds of things that we are expecting you to do are two-way linkages into what each area is doing, including key projects and initiatives. So we know that the manifesto sits above an awful lot of things. The intention is not to do a massive land grab empire build of every single project that could possibly have anything to do with the manifesto. The idea is simply to ensure that there is alignment between what the manifesto is saying and what activity is happening in each of the different areas. We also want you to monitor change within your area. And that is not just observe and say, oh, it's not going very well, or it's going great guns and we can sit back and be happy. It is also to contribute to how we do things differently or better. And this is really, really important, because one of the huge bits of feedback we had during the employee engagement sessions was that we never recognise when we don't do things that well or things aren't working. Instead, we'd rather kind of ignore it and let an initiative die in a corner while we start something else. and think that that's going to be the way in which we tackle it. We don't want to do that because we don't have all the answers. You have a significant size of workforce. It's a big ask to do a cultural change, and it's a very fundamental change that will take a significant period of time. We're not talking 3 months, we're talking 12 to 24 months. What we need is input from everyone to say, actually, this isn't working in my area, or this isn't landing, or I'm not seeing these behaviour changes, or we've got a real issue over here. And for us to have a big connected network whereby you have the freedom to come and say, I've got an idea of what would work in this case, or what I've seen work elsewhere, or what I think we should learn from this. And that's when we're going to be able to make real cultural change, is to get to a point where we can share ideas and really take advice from you as part of the workforce and the ear of your exec as to what you think is the right way of embedding things in your particular area or for the people that you come into contact with. So that's the course correction piece. And the last piece is to informally update your exec. So we know that you have much more time with them than we do, and we will be updating them on a reasonably regular basis with the kind of nuts and bolts of how things are going and whether or not there's any significant course correctional things that we need them to do. But obviously we assume that you'll be able to update them informally on the things that you're hearing or concerns that you have, or things that you think are great ideas that they might want to implement. So your role is hugely important because really you're the ones that are responsible for ensuring that those manifesto messages are represented in all that happens in your own areas. So particularly if you're a chief of staff, you know, you've already got those kinds of fingers in pies, so that should make things a little bit easier, but also you've probably got a lot more of the knowledge that we can tap into to help us do the right things to embed activities in your area. We don't want to build a massive central team. We really want that shared ownership to sit out in the organisational areas, because that's the way that this is going to stick, not by pushing stuff out from a central hub CEO office and being all the arms and legs. So also you will help us to align the other functional and organisational changes to the manifesto. So if I just pick one, I know, Michelle, there's a lot of things, for example, that are going on in people where there is quite a big overlap with what the manifesto is trying to achieve, and they're not just at programme level, they're also at business as usual level. So Michelle's role will be to help ensure that we've got that alignment and we've not got things happening that perhaps don't take into account what the manifesto is saying or what it's trying to do. Okay, sorry, I was just using you as an example, Michelle. Don't worry,
that's fine, Clever.
So on the next slide, we've got these are the roles of the other parts of the wider manifesto team. So as I said, you can take a look at them in your own time. So before I go on actually and talk about the launch and the established phases of activity, has anyone got any questions about what the cross-functional team is here for? Is anybody surprised at anything that I've said?
Can I just make an additional comment on something that we haven't covered, Claire, but we might well cover later on? And that is, whilst it's the responsibility to embed the manifesto, you also have an extra layer of responsibility with regard to the behavioural theme that is owned by the exec you are representing. So as the cross-functional team lead member, whatever you want to be referred to as, it's really your job to make sure your exec succeeds and ensuring that the theme that they lead on is actively embedded across the business, not just within your areas. So you'll also be needing to work probably with the change makers, and some will be aligned to your theme, to look at, right, what do we need to do to really make people, for example, feel valued? You know, we value each other, come up with ideas, and link it to other programs. So that ensuring that those themes are really well embedded, and for Gareth's perspective, the new professionals and everything we do, you need to make sure that your exec gets the best coverage and the best head start and embedding that theme across the organisation, sharing best practice, which is exactly what this forum will be for you to be able to come along and say, right, you know, for our theme, what we'd like to see you doing in your areas is X, Y, and Z. So you've got that ownership not only of the embedding of the manifesto as a whole, but also the behavioural themes aligned to your exec that you're representing.
Correct. Okay, so and this is not this is not something we're going to just say go forth and multiply and do. We're going to give you an infrastructure. We're going to help you with how do we engage the change makers, how do we get those ideas up and flowing. So we're not expecting, we want a bit of consistency, so we're not going to do all the work, but we certainly want, the way that kind of we're collecting ideas and feedback and translating them into the direction of the program. Clearly we're going to give you quite a lot of support in that area, so so don't go thinking you've got a huge massive to-do list that you didn't have before you started this call 20 minutes ago. Okay, so what I want to talk about, did anybody have any comments? Sorry.
Yes, just one from me, it's Michelle. What I'd also be interested in is, as we work through this and start to embed it, that we, I'm sure it's going to happen, where we'll share what we're trying to do for each executive, so that we learn from each other as well, and ensure that we don't duplicate some of the efforts, because we may go off and do something, and somebody may go off and do something very, very similar. It would be good to combine the resources.
Yeah, that's a great call, Michelle, because actually where I said that this particular session probably lends itself quite well to recording, it'll be the other ones where we are expecting exactly that you do a lot of the knowledge sharing, because that's what the exec want to see as well. And in fact, they are starting to do that between themselves. They do need a bit of a push, but they are already starting to be clear with each other about what they're doing in each individual area, so that they can learn from not only the duplication piece, but also so that things don't drop down the cracks, or that they can learn from each other's mistakes without having to repeat them, which is part of the benefit of being, I think, quite transparent about it. So what I wanted to just talk briefly about is the phases of activity that we have put together. So we're only going to talk about this briefly, but the phase that we're in at the moment is phase 2. So phase 1 was kind of the countdown to the manifesto, so seeing some of the things come through on the informal communication channels, getting people ready for something being released in the week commencing 7th of September. And now we're formally in the launch period. So launch was not just one day. We had the leadership briefing, we then had the announcement from Martin, but there is a bunch of other stuff that has been coming out since the beginning of September and will continue into October to get people used to what the manifesto is, what it looks like, the words that are in it. So what we're trying to kind of achieve in terms of a desired outcome, and this is probably the most important part on this slide, is that the launch phase, which runs till the end of the month, is literally just awareness. We are not running before we can walk. We know that this is a big change, so even a month just to get people to recognise that there is a manifesto and it is a set of behavioural themes that we want people to start adopting is kind of the upshot of what we want people to understand by the end of the month. There'll be some people who won't even see the manifesto until later on in the month. There are some people that might not even see it until October. Now, it is being spammed absolutely everywhere in terms of posters, from what I could see, having seen some pictures of the urinals in one of the office buildings. So most people will have seen it, but this is a slow burn. We want people to be aware of it. We're not really expecting them to do anything with it at this moment in time. So you can see on here some of the illustrative messages, some of the channels that you might have seen the manifesto come down, although I haven't got urinals on here, to be honest. So that's kind of the launch. The next phase that we're moving into from the beginning of October is the establish phase, and we haven't called it embed because embedding is a long-term process, which for us is going to work if we've got this level of shared ownership for actually getting the manifesto into the organisational infrastructure. The aim between now and really the end of the calendar year is to go much more with understanding. We want people to understand what the point of the manifesto is, to know more about what each of the behavioural themes are, to see why those things are aspirational things that we would like to adopt and we want to see role modelled, and to understand how they can link the content of the manifesto to what they do in their everyday jobs and what things might need changing to enable people to behave in the way that we want them to behave. And this is quite a different approach to my understanding of how Sellafield usually does these types of activities, which can be a massive fanfare for a couple of months and then these things sort of die in a ditch. And that's not the intention of the manifesto. It is meant to be a movement, not an initiative. So we're expecting it to be around for a long time. And so what we don't want everybody to do is to try and change all their behaviours at once, find it all too difficult, and then basically drop it and say, I can't cope with this manifesto, it's too tough. What we want them to do is to really start to understand that level of self-reflection and what it means for their everyday working roles and how they act towards each other. So similar sorts of channels and mechanisms you'll be seeing on here, but it'll be different things coming down them. So in particular, we'll start seeing a theme per month being put out through the communications channels, and we will continue to run employee engagement sessions like the workshops we did in the beginning to help people understand more about the individual themes and to get a feel from people in our workforce to say, well, actually, this means this to me, and I think you need to consider X, Y, Z as a way of embedding that behavioural theme in the rest of the organisation. So we want to continue all of this, people being able to contribute to the direction of travel, but at the same time, just allowing people time to absorb and understand what the manifesto actually says. So it's not some huge tick list of activities that we're going to be pushing down everybody's throats for the next 3 months. It's going to be a slow burn of things that will be distributed out, conversations we want people to be having, discussions while they get used to the manifesto appearing in things that they're seeing every day and things that they're talking about in each of their meetings. Right, now I just want to see everybody because I've got you all off. Emma Jane, anything I've missed, misrepresented, things that you would like to comment on?
No, that's perfect, thank you.
No, any questions at this point? I realise this is a tell today, but it won't be next time, I promise. Especially not if my mouse stops working.
Slightly tangential question while you get the mouse working.
Go ahead.
Is it possible to get a copy of this format of slides so I can plagiarise it shockingly?
Yeah, absolutely. I love my squares, Catherine. Love my PowerPoint squares. Emma Jane will tell you. They appear on everything, but yes, you can. Right, let's hide you all again. Okay, so that's the next phase. So I guess the kind of upshot is that we're not trying to do hundreds of things at once. So talk a bit about your, in fact, yeah, we'll talk a little bit about what we are. Oh, Simon, go ahead.
Oh, yes, thank you. So I just had a question regarding the themes, and
yes.
I'm not sure, just looking at those slides, I'm guessing I'm reading from top to bottom, left to right, and that's how I get to program 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc. Is that right?
No. So program.
No.
Yeah, sorry, I could have been much more. No, that's not right. So no, the programs. Let me go back to the right slide. So there just happen to be that many programs. No reason other than that is illustrative on the slide. So the programs that fit underneath there could be 20, it could be 3. They're not related to specific themes. There is a mapping between projects or programs and themes, but actually some of them map one to many. So if you take the leadership standard, for example, whatever it's going to end up being called, that doesn't just fit to one theme. These are programs that we're keeping an eye on because we know it's critical really to embedding the manifesto, that all of them take the manifesto and are fully aligned to it in anything that they do, and they're not going off on a tangent. So there is no direct correlation between the themes and the programs in this sense. Does that make sense?
So a quick one, Claire, from Alex. So yeah. I would expect then a lot of these would be the 13 change platforms we've been discussing recently.
Oh, I don't know.
Nothing that we've been discussing.
I was going to say I have an answer.
So I don't think the 13 platforms are the the structure being developed by Transformation. I don't
That's not
think
linked.
that we are at that stage yet.
No, this isn't linked to transformation. This isn't linked to the transformation function at all. The programs that sit under, the reason for, another really strong reason for having this program lead group of people is because currently none of them speak to each other. And that's been really, sorry, it's a fact. And that's been really, really evident throughout the work that we've been doing, that there's loads of fantastic programs going on, loads of fantastic work, but with loads of overlap and no one kind of being able to coordinate it all or understand what's going on. Or so as an example, Catherine's doing some fantastic work on strategy, Claire and I are doing work on the manifesto, and Joanne's doing work on the leadership standard, yet we all need to time with communications, but we're all having individual conversations. So the whole point of this is bringing everyone together so that we can coordinate really carefully what we're working on together for the enterprise view rather than our individual pieces of work. So in those program leads, we have invited Chris Darwin as a program lead, so transformation will be mapped in, but this isn't being led by transformation in any way, and I do need to make sure that that's clear. Catherine's going to be in there for strategy, Joanna's going to be in there for leadership standard and for academy. We've got Tim in there for HIP. So, you know, there's a whole, we've got ISO in there as well. Anywhere that's got a project coming in or going on will come in and out of this program lead group. So it may be, as Claire says, we start off at 8, but then it goes down to 2, but then it goes up to 20. It's somewhere that we can coordinate all the activities that some way need to link to that manifesto.
And that's the key point. So I have actually got, the reason why we know what the projects are is because I have got another version of this slide that has not got the illustrative program 1, 2, 3. There's got the actual programs in it. Now the reason I left them as program 1, 2, 3 and then N is because it could change. So exactly as Emma Jane said, at the point where something is perhaps at the initial stages, we would probably want to see it represented in here. We want to keep close contact to make sure that the alignment is there. But after it reaches an embedding phase, we just assume that that alignment is there, and that one will come off the focus of the manifesto. So it could, so as we said, this could change. We're hoping also that it will encourage this behaviour that we want to see, which is where programs actually do get closed down when they're finished or when they need to change direction, but actually there is some sort of closure and end point, rather than we continually discuss the same things, which you know, then don't actually make any changes or whatever it might be. So that was another bit of feedback from the group. But I will add, before I send this set slides out, I'll add in the other one so you can see the projects that we've got on the list, because there may be ones that you know of that we don't, where we need to see some alignment, in which case we'd hope you'd tell us. Gareth, go ahead, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. It's just really developing that point. So we're doing some work with the recovery programme this week and understanding how our bits of our programme support some of the manifesto themes. And essentially I was kind of looking at this as an opportunity to look at the programmes we have and understanding which elements of these programmes really support what themes and how that might work. And that provides the basis then for probably a different focus and then amplifying some of those elements of the programme or accelerating them. And so that's how I kind of saw that in terms of the programme bit. Is that a correct understanding?
The recovery team are in it actually. So we've been speaking to Tom Durkin and the recovery team are part of the programme. So they've been invited to the programme lead meetings as well. And we've also been speaking to them about alignment with manifesto. So that's a really good observation.
Yeah, that's a really good addition. So Gareth, yeah, you're reading that in exactly the right way.
Yeah.
Right. So if
Thank you.
Go back.
So just to be
Carrie, go ahead.
Sorry, just to be clear then, Claire. So I've gone through an exercise where I've mapped the various things that I think we're doing either within ES&S, or it doesn't necessarily have to be within ES&S. It can be initiatives that I think support those various different themes. Do you want me to send that through to yourself just so that you can cross-check that? So, for example, I've included some of the stuff that Gary McKeaton and Jamie are doing on 6. Is that included in your piece?
I think it is, but it would be very useful. I think 6 is, because we looked at some of the campaign stuff and we knew that there would be an overlap. But yeah, if you can send that through to us, we can make sure that we just, even if we get loads of programs at the beginning and then after the first session, some of them say, actually, we're not anywhere near further through, and of course we'll take on the manifesto when we get to that point, then they don't have to continue. But yeah, the more we end up with, the better to start with, I think. So that'd be great. Thanks very much, Carrie.
It's Michelle.
Yeah.
Could I just add something in relation to the enterprise and how we're structured as an organisation?
Yeah.
The enterprise has a handle on all the programmes and projects that we're officially working on. I know there's some others that are working on unofficially. I'm not sure how those play into this, and whether we have oversight of all of those in relation to ensuring that this becomes part of our culture.
Enterprise don't have a list of all projects and programs that we're working on. That was evident from when we started this. So it is something
Really?
that's currently missing.
Mm.
But yeah,
No,
so
I've been misinformed then.
yeah,
But also I think John Seddon has a handle on them as well. So it might be that.
I think I think the confusion, Michelle, is whether it's mandated as a program or portfolio or something
Yes.
in a formal structure, or whether it's a work stream called something or other in a particular area. So I think it's to do with the way we use the word program.
Yeah, there's a specific heat map which shows which ones have been which programs have gone through formal governance and where they are. We tend to use programs a bit loosely in the company, but that's fine.
This is going to be a continued risk, I think, in that that's why we've sort of got this, what looks like a big hub and spoke, because we're hoping that the spokes, whether it's you, the programme leads, the change makers, will be able to help us to complete that picture, because at the moment nobody has the single picture. And I think the fact that some programs come with a request for investment will mean that is tracked at a particular place, but where they're using existing staff, that might be tracked at a different place or not tracked at all. And then you've also got projects which are like pet projects, which a lot of those tend to be business change and cultural type things, which we would want to know about, but possibly aren't relevant to everybody else. So I think it's a case of keeping a close eye on the other things that are happening, and hoping that by aligning them to the manifesto, we stop some of the duplication that happens now.
Okay, so I could send you the current heat map, which shows the programs which have gone through formal governance.
Yeah, if you could do that, Alex, that would help.
Yeah, there's over 40 of those, and it shows the status of them, and we use that to inform the EDC on a quarterly basis. So
okay,
I'll send that through.
Yeah, if you could send that through, that would be really helpful. So Carrie, if you send yours, Alex, if you can send that, and then any other things that you think are maybe going off on a slightly different track or need to know more about the manifesto or the other way around, then obviously just raise them at these meetings. Okay, let me hide you all again. Where were we? We were, oh my God, my mouse is like slower than I am today. Okay, so we've talked a bit about this. So the activity areas for you as the CFT, cross-functional team, directorate coordination. So this is the making sure that you're kind of being the interface between the manifesto and what your organisation or area is doing. So assuring alignment to the manifesto behaviours and the purpose and the things that are happening. So whether that's business as usual or projects. Being a manifesto role model, this kind of goes without saying, but you know, actually making sure you are self-reflecting, modelling your own behaviours on what is written in the manifesto, and making sure that is the outward kind of displaying that you're doing to other people who undoubtedly look up to you guys, helping us with distributing messaging, particularly via informal routes, so things like the WhatsApp group or whatever other funky stuff we come up with when we start to engage properly with the change makers. And also if you have ideas of how rumours spread, for example, in Sellafield, then let us know, because they're the kinds of things that we'd like to tap into, because we want to make sure that this messaging is going out to as many places as it can. We know that has been a problem in the past. So anything you can do to help us get over that is great. Update your email signatures. I am turning into the email signature police. If I get emails that don't have the signature on, I do tend to pinpoint it and say, where's your signature?
However,
yes.
Newsflash, it's going to be done automatically. So we're working with comms. They're going to actually automatically update everybody's signatures. So people can get off the naughty step because it will just happen.
Okay, good. And
I found an error with it as well, by the way. So I've updated
Oh.
my signature, but if you actually, for example, if you're in a Word document and you go to share that, it doesn't actually update, it doesn't include your signature on the email for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why.
that might be your settings, actually. I don't know if you can change them, Carrie.
I've tried that. I'll have a look at it anyway. But anyway, I just noticed that I had updated my signature, but when I was attaching documents in a different way, it didn't always have them on. But I'll look at it. Thank you.
That's yeah. We might need to get comms to look at that if they're going to update them centrally.
We might also need to understand whether they're just going to put the banner on or whether they're going to put your name,
Banner
role, etc. on, because I suspect most people's details in the address book are not up to date.
Yeah, it's banner.
Since we changed.
Just doing the banner, personal details will have to be updated by the individual.
No, that saves a big problem.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks.
Yeah, I saw someone's got one that says Jack of all trades, which I thought was an interesting title for their directory.
That's Carrie and Adam, isn't it?
Master of none.
Oh dear.
Oh, that's not true, Carrie.
That's not, oh dear. Right, okay, so also lanyards, they are on order for the end of the month, I think it is. I don't know when they're going to start arriving, hopefully within the next few days, and we will want you all to be wearing them, please, to make sure that you're helping to spread the message. I'll probably even wear one from home just without a pass on. So also helping us, this is the key thing that I know everybody's working through at the moment. So the main focus for the exec over the next probably 8 weeks is to start to get out and talk to the people, either on a face-to-face basis, which is going to be a very small part, I imagine, or on Teams meetings, or on phone calls that are already happening. So helping the exec to get this visibility and to offer people the opportunity to discuss and ask questions on the manifesto. So what we've asked you all to do, and we've got probably 75%, I think now, is to give us a good view of what team meetings happen already in your particular areas that we can either jump in on if there is the possibility to do that, or if we can feed messages into to make sure that people are attending other broader events to be led by individuals within the exec to start discussing and asking questions on the manifesto. This manifesto is never going to work if people don't have the opportunity to feedback on it, ask questions on it, understand how they should relate to it, etc. And that is what we're trying to offer them. They really appreciated the leadership briefing and the announcement. So if we can use the technology to do similar things in a way that works, then that's what we'll intend to do.
And I just pitch in on there, Claire, because
Yes.
it's something that I'm really passionate about. So it's my aspiration that every single person in our organisation gets the opportunity to have some sort of FaceTime, however that may be in modern times, with an exec member where they have an opportunity to ask questions about the manifesto and hear it firsthand. As an organisation, our comms are hierarchical and they don't work. So, you know, historically, the CEO would talk to what they perceive as the top 160, who then talk to the next level, who then talk to the next level, and so forth, until your Band 5 operators get little, if none, of the messages that came from the CEO. Any passion is completely removed and is very, very diluted. And from the feedback of speaking to people, some of them don't even know the person that's above their line manager, let alone who their exec is leading that organisation or the CEO leading the business. Visible leadership is one of Martin's top priorities. It isn't something that's optional, it's something that we have to make happen. And so this, while it might seem like a bit of a nuisance to have to get all the details of all your meetings and things like that, it's really, really important. It can have a real difference to an individual and make one person feel really valued. And if through this we just get 1, 2, 3 people feel valued and have that FaceTime and feel that they're not just a grade or a number, then to me that's a huge success. So that communications and that engagement is super important to both myself and to Martin.
Okay. So the next point on here is around supporting the priority setting of the behavioural themes. So you should all, and we'll send out the slide that's got the execs and the themes anyway, but you should all know what behavioural theme your exec is supporting or leading on, and what we're going to be asking them to do, when we will make sure that we share the ask of the exec with all of you guys as well, but we will be asking them to start to think about what their priorities are for that behavioural theme in terms of establishing and embedding. We don't think there is going to be a long list. In fact, we're hoping it's not, because we want to use the change makers and other people within the workforce to help us to understand what are the important things to them to get these themes embedded. But we are absolutely sure they will ask you to help with that process. So that's just something to be aware of. So whilst we're not expecting to give everybody an activity list of things that they need to complete by Christmas or beyond, we want, you know, some thinking around what are the key things that each of the behavioural themes should be targeting, in order for us to start role modelling those behaviours and have them be truly established and embedded in the organisation. Housekeeping, obviously attending these meetings. So the key thing, as Michelle already pointed out, and it will be much less us talking next time, so we'll prepare a proposed agenda which you can rip up and create your own if you want to. I don't really have any issue with that as long as we cover the key things, but it's an opportunity for us to let you know the direction of travel, and for you to share knowledge, feedback, let us know how things are going, feedback from the exec, give us learnings, tell us how things are landing within the rest of the workforce, things you're hearing. So these are much more discussion forums and ways for us to make sure we're on track, and make sure that the projects and business as usual in your particular organisational parts are actually aligning with the manifesto. And so I think, do we say bi-weekly? Is it every other week?
Every 2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll run them for the foreseeable on Zoom. I'll set up the Zoom session, and then we'll go from there. So we'll make sure that you've got a proposed agenda, I'd say the week before the next one, so that you've got the opportunity to take a look at it and let us know what you'd like to add. The other things that you just might want to consider are things that we're already seeing happen in some areas. So starting off that knowledge share, some areas are doing a bit of a baseline of manifesto behaviours. So actually looking at their areas and saying, right, well, which things do we think that we're really quite good at? Which things do we think we're quite far off? What things might we be able to do in our particular area and in the way that we operate that might start to push some of these behavioural themes to become behavioural reality? Some areas, Catherine has already tried this, a safety share and then a manifesto share in your meetings. Probably went down like a lead balloon initially, but might get better as we go on. And then
it was a very long silence.
I can only imagine, but people will get used to it soon enough. I can imagine. And that, yeah, it seemed more awkward then, isn't it, on the phone or on a Zoom? But anyway, and then the third
it's a
piece
really good idea, Claire, isn't it?
I thought
it's a really good idea because the manifesto and the safety share are really close relatives, aren't they? Because if the behaviours are not appropriate, we may have some safety issues. So I think that's a great idea, Catherine.
Another option for using it is to use it at the end of the meeting to actually measure the behaviours that you witnessed in the meeting. So you could actually, it gives you an opportunity to say where certain people have displayed good behaviours, but also to be able to give open feedback and honest feedback to those that haven't displayed them. So it can be used as either just a share or actually a way of addressing and changing those behaviours that you're witnessing.
Yeah, that's a really great suggestion. But I think one of the things I've been thinking about is just sort of safety too, thinking about constantly reinforcing the positive, you know, and how do we do more of that? It's easy to keep focusing on a negative and essentially reinforcing negative behaviour. So for me, I think the kind of anything that reinforces the positive behaviour and how do we do more of that is probably where we want to do with this.
Yeah, I think the more of is the way to certainly capture the attention, and also it's the way to get people. A lot of the questions we're getting so far are around why is this any different to any other time? Why is this any different to any other initiative? So we need to actively be looking for things that are done differently, and turning that positive spin on things will be a very different approach, and it will be a different feel to a lot of the things we've had in the past. So I think that's a great add, Gareth.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, And then the other thing is we had one, I can't remember which area it was, did a newsletter out to the rest of their area and had a kind of the manifesto emblazoned on it. So if there's anything that you need from us in terms of logos, materials, that sort of stuff on the manifesto that you want to include in your own comm stuff, then just let us know because we'll have it available. There will be, I'm conscious of time, there will be an intranet site that's set up and specifically for manifesto content, which will now enable you to download materials that have been used so that you can reuse slides, don't go creating your own. And so if there's anything in the meantime that you need that you can't get access to, then just let us know and we'll be able to send it round. Okay, but I don't think we've got any time left. But oh, you're on mute, Emma Jane.
Sorry, I was just saying we've got 2 o'clock Zoom
Yeah.
meeting, so
So if anybody has any questions, can I ask, given that I've rambled on, that you send them through to us on email and I'll make sure that you get a response back today. We will also be sharing around a Q&A document, which we've been working on, so that if anybody starts to come to talk to you about the manifesto and ask specific things, we probably have answered it in there. So at least it's a reference point for you as, you know, while you're getting to know the content, the manifesto, actually what the subsets are beneath it. Right, thank you for a whistle stop tour. Lovely to meet you all virtually on Zoom, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao for now.
am I going into a different call, Claire?
You are.
Okay.